Good afternoon, everyone. Good evening, good morning, depending on where you are in the world. Chris and I are in California, so it is 3 o'clock in the afternoon here for us. And just like how Agile is about responding and adapting to change, we today are responding and adapting to some change, specifically in the form of Mother Nature. So, our guest, Edison, is facing tornadoes in his area. So, we are wishing the best for Edison, and we hope to talk to Edison at a future date. Chris, have you ever been in tornado before? Have you ever?
So I grew up in the Midwest, mostly
Yeah.
outside of Chicago, but a little bit of time outside of Milwaukee and Green Bay. And so growing up, tornado watches and tornado warnings were a regular part of life. And I think to this day, I'm still traumatized by them.
Oh
So,
man.
so Edison, good luck. Um, Hang in there.
Yep, we're wishing you the best. So, speaking of whirlwinds, tornadoes, winds, we still do want to talk about job searching today. That has been a really hot topic lately. There's been a lot of changes in the tech industry, which is where we usually find ourselves in Agile Learning Labs is working with tech companies. Lots of people looking for work, looking for jobs. We wanted to share kind of our experience today. By the way, I'm seasoned and I'm an Agile coach with Agile Learning Labs. This is Chris.
And I'm Chris Sims. I am an Agile coach and Scrum trainer with Agile Learning Labs, which would explain the matching
We do
shirt.
this every day. We call each other. We say, "Hey, Chris, what are you wearing today?" I
Yeah.
don't think I'll wear my red Agile Learning Lab shirt. We coordinate. It's a thing.
Yeah. We should just put days in the calendar right ahead of time so we just
We
know.
should.
Yeah. Yeah.
Planning, following a plan.
So,
Uh-oh.
so speaking of being agile and pivoting and responding to change,
Mm-hmm.
so season you typically host these things, and
We
you
do.
you allow me to ride along, and I appreciate that. But I kind of want to turn it on its head today
Mm.
because I actually think you would be the much more informative guest than I would. So our topic is, agile job search tips, tricks, and all of that. And truth be told, it's been well over 20 years since this guy was applying for any job. But I happen to know that over the course of the last 4 years, you've actually executed several successful job
Yeah.
searches and even before that. So, if you're game, I'd like to turn things around and interview you if you're good with that.
Oh man, yeah, my favorite thing is being the center of attention and talking about myself. That's actually why I like to do these is I love learning about other people. It becomes much harder when it's about me, but yes, I'm game. I can share some of my wisdom, what it was like being a scrum master with no prior experience. Even I've changed fields, careers a couple of times. Let's dive right in. What do you want to know?
All right. Well, you've kind of, given a little, what is it, foreshadowing, I suppose.
Mhm.
So, one of the things that people ask me, and I know ask you as well frequently, is something along the lines of, hey, I think I'm interested in, Scrum and Agile stuff. And I've heard about this role called Scrum Master. And people tell me that I might make a great Scrum Master, but I don't have any experience in the tech industry. I come from fill in the blank here. Um, and Season, you didn't always work in tech. Where did you start? And tell us about your transition into tech.
Oh man, yeah. How far back do we want to go?
Where,
Yeah, I'll
where
say
were you
my.
born, Season? And how
Oh
old were
man,
you at the
wow.
time?
Well, Virginia Beach, Virginia. Yeah, I've had a long, fun life, lived many places, worked many jobs. My first ever job was actually as a lifeguard. I think I was 15 years old in Kernersville, family YMCA. So I've certainly come a long way in CA since then. But yeah, focusing on, we'll start with how I got into tech. And I will say that if you do want to become a Scrum Master, if you have some experience in tech, whatever that experience is, that is a huge help to you because you will already understand the weird and wonderful culture that is tech. You will know some of the acronyms, you will know some of the ways of working, you will know that things often simultaneously move at the speed of light and incredibly slowly. You'll just kind of have a feel for the world of technology. And there are common themes no matter kind of what sub industry in tech you find yourself in. So my advice to you would be to find some way into a tech job if you do want to become a Scrum Master. That will get you a leg up on getting a job, and it will make you a better Scrum Master. How I got into tech, um, fast forwarding kind of through college and all of that, I got a master's in library science. I wanted to be a librarian. And this happened to be in 2008, which was another fun time for anybody trying to find a job. I worked in libraries for a time and then I was laid off due to budget cuts. Due to being a newer librarian, they will cut you from the bottom, all the new people there. So I found myself being laid off, and I just said, I'm going to do something that I really want to do. I'm going to do something fun. I'm going to work with animals. I took that year to be an adoption advisor at a humane society.
Oh,
And
that's
then
so
I was
cool.
in, yeah, it was cool. It was fun. It was Seattle Humane Society, working with dogs, cats, small animals. My role is people would come in and they would be looking for an animal, and I would be there to kind of give them more information, learn more about them, hear if they were going to be a match or not. So that was really, really fun job. And then I
That's
switched
so
over. Oh,
cool.
yeah,
So if I may, a little
please.
a little detour into Chris. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so before I ever taught my first Scrum workshop, I actually used to teach at the Peninsula Humane Society here in the San Francisco Bay Area in San Mateo.
No.
Yeah, I used to be the kind of onboarding person when new volunteers were coming to join the shelter, and I would teach them like how to get around the shelter and how to handle the animals and stuff like that. So I
Oh,
didn't
wow.
realize we had that sort of like humane society connection there. That's kind of
We,
cool.
we love the animals here at Agile Learning Labs. We do. So, yeah, I worked at the Humane Society, and then just for a little more kind of flexibility, I transitioned to becoming a dog walker and dog trainer with a company in Seattle. And I kept getting calls from recruiters throughout the year, and I was just like, no, I'm here, I'm happy, I'm working with animals, I'm getting paid next to nothing. And it's not it's challenging in different ways. I often found that it wasn't always the most like intellectually stimulating job, which can be very nice to kind of take that break and just focus on animals and their behavior and like cleaning up dog poop. It was wonderful, but I was finding myself kind of wanting more towards
Like
the
being,
end.
how's this like being a Scrum Master? Anyway,
That's a discussion for another time. But I just one day I answered a recruiter's phone call, and they were from Aerotech, which was a company that I had actually worked for before. I had a different job with them, contract job that had turned into a full time job at a biotech company before. But answered the call, and they were looking for someone to work at Amazon in Seattle. So I took a contracting job with Amazon's Kindle self-publishing division there, and our role was to kind of screen materials. Self-publishing means that authors are kind of writing their own stuff and uploading it to the Kindle platform, and we had to make sure both that it wasn't copyrighted material because people were trying to pass off Harry Potter as their own work all the time. And then we were a team of people that spoke different languages. So we would both be reviewing content in English and whatever other language we spoke. Mine was Spanish, to make sure that it didn't violate any kind of like offensive content rules. Like we really didn't want to expose people to anything illegal, or we wanted to take certain measures to make sure that if it did have adult content, it was in the appropriate place, kind of in the store for people to find. So those are some interesting meetings and some interesting pictures and pieces of text that would be like up on the PowerPoint presentation, and we'd all be looking at in meetings like very seriously. Like sometimes I couldn't believe that that was my job. But that is how I got into tech, was answering a phone call from a recruiter for a contracting position that, as you heard, was a very interesting one. And then I had kind of a winding road from there that has led me to where I am today.
So what was the next job that you went looking for, right? So there came a point where you're like, oh, I need a new job. And just tell us, like, how'd you go about that next gig?
Yeah, I've had an interesting combination of either jobs kind of coming to me or me actively looking for a job. So my next job was moving to a different team at Amazon that was looking for people with librarian skills to do some organization. I'd had a friend on my team that went over to that team, and she kind of encouraged me to go over there. So that kind of found me. But then I was living in Seattle, and I was going through a divorce at the time, and I wanted a change. I wanted to get out of Seattle. I wanted sunnier weather. I'd been to California before and just loved it. And so I started looking for jobs that would take me out of Seattle and into California, and I found a job at a startup in Sunnyvale, California, that was looking for the job that I had had at Amazon, which was a taxonomist, someone who's organizing information. And I interviewed, they flew me out to Sunnyvale. I would be kind of their first and only person doing this role, really leading a lot of machine learning and stuff that I picked up at working at Amazon and working in tech. And it was just a really good fit, and I really wanted to kind of leave behind what had been going on in Seattle. So that's what I looked for, is I looked for just the skills that I had developed in technology. I looked for a place that I wanted to be. I'm pretty sure I was using LinkedIn as well. This will be a theme, is LinkedIn has been key to me in many of the searches that I've been actively doing. Just looking for keywords, titles, and locations, applying to a lot of places, and just also sending thank you notes. I think I always do that after I have interviews. That's been something I think that has served me well, is just getting to know the people as I get interviewed and thanking them for their time. I think they've appreciated that. But for me, it was LinkedIn that helped me in my next kind of active search. And I see Oren is writing in about what industry is the untapped one that Scrum can most benefit. So as we're talking about like animal shelters and publishing and stuff, industries for Scrum. I can say right now off the top of my head, I listen into some of the work that goes on with my boyfriend, who works literally right next to me. So we hear each other's meetings all the time. I'm hearing a lot of like animation industry kind of stuff over there. And I think that they could benefit from some principles of Scrum and kind of helping to plan and adapt to change. So that's an interesting one that comes to mind. Chris, what do you think?
A trend that I've definitely seen in terms of Agile Learning Labs clientele is, over the last several years, we have had a significant uptick in biotech companies that are adopting Scrum and kind of related practices, and not just in things that you would think of like software aspects, but really kind of company wide, right? We've got several companies that won't develop software at all. They're creating molecules. And so their Scrum teams have, lab technicians and biologists and, folks like that on the team. And I've been seeing more and more of that over the last, oh goodness, 3 to 5 years. So that's clearly happening. Um, and in fact, if folks go to the Agile Learning Labs YouTube channel and go back a little bit, I think we did record when we had a leader of a biotech firm who had been using Scrum and Agile practices, talking about like how they did that. So I'm pretty sure you can find that on our YouTube channel. Um, Another one that I've seen just through like personal connections, friends and stuff, is education. And I've had a little bit of experience with teachers who are actually using Scrum in the classroom, but I've also seen it applied in kind of continuous improvement programs at schools. So I know someone who works in the field where they help schools that are doing improvement programs focused on particular populations or particular areas of school performance, and applying Scrum either explicitly or implicitly, right? The inspect and adapt cycles that we're so familiar with. So those are some. Years back in San Francisco, I don't know if this group is still active or not. There was a meetup group for legal Scrum. It was like people who are using Scrum in law offices. Apparently, the work that happens in a law office lends itself real well to Scrum. You've got a cross-functional team of lawyers, paralegals, researchers, and other folks who have to work together to make stuff happen. And lots of unknown unknowns, right? So definitely complex work. Um, and I kind of lost touch with that group. I don't know if they're still around because this goes back at least a dozen years that group existed. Yeah, so those are
Great
some.
question. Yeah, thanks,
So,
Oren.
so season.
Mm-hmm.
How'd you get your first Scrum Master job? And was it intentional? Did you decide I'm going to be a Scrum Master and went looking for it, or did it find you?
Absolutely not. I had at Amazon in the first job that I talked about, I had been handed this book at one point by Chris Sims, somebody named Chris Sims, about,
That's the same
yeah,
as my name.
I
That's
know.
like, wait,
And
where is it?
even
There it is. There it is.
what's behind you, like it had the same kind of colors and theme on the book. Yeah, there was a manager at Amazon who just said like, wow, this is really cool stuff, let's adopt some of these practices in our self-publishing division. So I kind of knew about Scrum and the practices, and we followed a little bit of them. We did do a lot of Kaizen at Amazon, which I think is a lean practice. We had the practice of an andon cord as well, which is another, maybe those are both Toyota production system agile
Mhm.
stuff, where if someone sees something not working, no matter what their role is, they can kind of pull a cord, so to speak, and stop the line and say like, well, we need to fix this. But I knew about Scrum and Agile, had really no plans to kind of pursue it formally. It was kind of around, and bits of it were being used in the jobs that I was in. But it's another one where I just kind of ended up in the role. I was working as an SEO specialist, search engine optimization specialist at Atlassian. It was a very technical role where I was basically kind of doing audits of performance and practice of different Atlassian websites and making changes and recommendations in the back end to get them to rank higher in search engines. So I knew kind of the tech speak stuff. I knew things like stand ups, and we used Jira and like tracked our work. But I also was really falling in love with facilitating meetings, or helping teams come up with goals, or teaching classes. I was really starting to just love that aspect of work, and even more so than the day to day SEO. And I told my manager that too. He's Michael Lee at Atlassian, amazing manager. Shout out to Michael, totally supportive, was kind of helping me do more of those things. And I think he had talked to a manager in another department kind of about my goals. And that manager came up and said, hey, you should apply to be our Scrum Master. We're hiring. And I did not really know what that was. I thought it was like the weirdest sounding job title ever. Like I was kind of horrified a bit of like Scrum Master. Like what is that? So yeah, exactly. Like I didn't want to say that, but that's immediately what came to mind was like, is this some sort of like BDSM thing? Like what?
Whipping the team, making them go faster.
Right? Like, yeah, I still, that's another LinkedIn Live discussion, but I still think there are opportunities maybe to improve some of the titles and language we're using here in Scrum. But anyway, did some research and I was like, yeah, I would be good at that. So I had an interview just in a couple days for the position and kind of quickly like Googled stuff, reread the book that I had been given at Amazon because I had both a copy of it, hard copy, and on my Kindle. Just really kind of brushed up on what it was and got the basics of it, and ended up interviewing and getting the role of the Scrum Master for a couple of teams at Atlassian. One was working on front end web development, and the other was working on back end web development. So I knew a lot about tech. I obviously knew about web development from my SEO role. I was organized. I put myself out there and helped teams with facilitation and teaching and just kind of embraced what it was that I loved to do. And I got noticed for it. So even though I didn't have like the Scrum experience, I had really the foundations to become a good Scrum Master. And my first day on the job was my CSM class, getting my CSM certification. So I got thrown in the deep end.
Nice. So that was your first.
Yeah.
What was next? What tell us about your next job search?
Yep. Next job search was intentional. I loved Atlassian as a company, loved my teams, loved the people I worked with. The manager I had at the time, I just didn't see a good future. I didn't feel supported by the manager in a way that made me want to look elsewhere. So again, I think I went on LinkedIn and did those searches for Scrum Master, Agile, facilitation, retros. I was looking in the Bay Area. Again, this was pre COVID, so everything was in person. So I was in San Francisco looking for stuff there. And I saw Dolby, which I knew from, we insist on seeing movies in Dolby. I feel like that is the way to go. Even before I started working there, the whole guy with the fire, and yes, the projector is still on. It's just this black of a screen. Like we always laughed at it before the movies. And then I just applied there because I kind of knew them and loved them. And the funny thing is, like coming back to modern day, I always caution people when you're applying for Scrum Master jobs, is it a project manager job or a Scrum Master job? And this title was Project Manager slash Scrum Master. And it still ended up being probably my favorite Scrum Master job that I have had. So even though I throw out those words of caution, sometimes just ignore them and kind of see what happens. But yeah, I applied at Dolby. I interviewed it there. It was the first time I'd had kind of pairs of people interviewing me, and it turned out that I was speaking to the engineering lead and the product owner for each of the teams that I would be working with. At that time, I had Scrum experience, so I could kind of talk about, the challenges that I had faced. But again, the theme that I feel like I keep getting in these interviews is they're not grilling you on like, what is the purpose of a sprint review? Like, what is each Scrum artifact and commitment? They want to know can you facilitate conflict? They want to know, at Dolby, are you passionate about anything that we do, music or gaming or movies, radio? Can you connect with people on the team? So that was a really cool interview process. I remember speaking to one of my interviewers about Dungeons and Dragons and like tattoos and things. So I think what served me well is just having passion coming through and making connections with people. And that is at the heart of what a Scrum Master does a lot of the time. And I see do either of us have advice for how to best help people that are looking for Scrum Master positions? But yeah, as I said, I use LinkedIn a lot. If I'm looking for Scrum Master roles, I will put in so many different combinations of kind of keywords to find a role that's speaking to me. So I will look for Scrum Master, I'll look for Agile Coach, I'll put in the word Kanban, I'll put in continuous improvement, I'll put in sprint retrospective, I'll put in CSM, ACSM, CSPSM. I just will use a lot of keywords to kind of try to find the job that is right for me. You might be looking for a release train engineer position or something with safe, or you may be looking for like developer slash scrum master. That would be a good entry into scrum master is if you have those development skills. So starting there, look for those keywords in your job search. Go to meetups and do networking with people, definitely. So people that I've met and made a connection with when I see roles that are open, or if I get people who are like, "Hey, I'm hiring for a scrum master. Do you want to come work for me?" I'm always like, "No, I'm really, really happy where I am right now." But connect with this person, and this person. I know that they're looking. So network, find the right roles, and get educated also. Get that CSM or sometimes PSM is a good certification to start out with. Tends to be more kind of overseas jobs are looking for PSM. CSM seems to be the most popular here in the US. And then we also have an article. So unfortunately, we can't share anything in the chat while we're talking, which stinks. But
Pretty
after the
weird, yeah.
poster, I know we've got a couple of good articles with Agile Learning Labs on how to get a Scrum Master job if you're looking. So we'll post them. Chris, what did I forget there?
Well, so I was definitely going to call out that great article from April of 2022, written by Season Hughes, called "How Do I Get a Scrum Master Job?" And one of the things that I think is super awesome about that article is the links to resources in there, including places where people can like volunteer to get experience. Because one of the things that I do hear fairly often is, hey, I think I want to be a scrum master, but I don't have any experience. How can I get some experience? And there actually are organizations out there where you can do some volunteer work and at least dip your toe in the water and get something you can put on your resume, right? Was the scrum master for this volunteer project. So definitely, and Oren, if you're out there and you can put things in the chat, I bet you could find that link. It's on agilelearninglabs.com on our blog.
Yeah, Oren had a great. So Oren, we spoke with Oren a couple months ago on YouTube. You can follow that conversation about Oren's Scrum Master journey as well. And something that really surprised me from the conversation is how much PMI, the Project Management Institute, which has traditionally been kind of that very traditional project management organization, they're really getting into Agile and offering certifications, and even the PMP, which is their kind of big, really hard to study for and get certification, is leaning towards Agile now too. So check them out as well. Yeah, so that was my second ever Scrum Master job. And then, yeah, I mean, I think we should always talk about maybe there's always the what went well, like Sunshine and Roses at Dolby. And then I wanted to kind of explore other roles. I was pretty happy at Dolby, had a great manager, great teams. And then there was this company that approached me that I had been a fan of for years and years and years. There was a contracting role within them. I'd always wanted to work for this company, and ended up leaving Dolby just to pursue what I thought would be my dream company, my dream opportunity. And of course, looking back, would I have changed that? Like, probably not. I've learned and grown from that. And I've ended up here where I'm very happy. But I think what I've learned at this age is it's really not about what company you're working for. it's also not about what product you're working on. So if you're chasing these big, shiny names in the industry, or as a Scrum Master, like if I am only going to work with teams that like work on video games or work on animals or work on travel, like I've been thrilled to work on a team that was working on like music loudness measurements, which I know nothing about, not one of my hobbies. And I was delighted on that team. I was delighted to work for kind of smaller companies, or like Dolby will never be like an Amazon of the tech industry, but it was great there. So yeah, I kind of learned from that, like don't your dream company may not actually be your dream company. What's important is that you love what you do, you love the people you work with, and having a great manager cannot be overstated, that importance as well. So don't always chase the shiny.
I'm reminded of I had a friend of mine who was a journalist. And I remember something they warned me on at some point. I was all excited because I was going to meet like one of my Agile heroes, right? Years and years ago. And this friend of mine who was a journalist said, well, be careful. I've had the opportunity to meet and interview a number of my heroes. And you can often be disappointed when you meet the actual person, right? Because whether it's a company that you're enamored with or a person that you're enamored with that you don't actually know, right? You just know their public image. Yeah, it's like, the reality may be a little different, right? Human beings and companies tend to be messy.
Yes.
So yeah, I love that. It also reminds me of a bit of advice that I have given many, many times, even to people who reported to me back in the day when I was like, manager person. Um, when you're feeling like, oh, right, it's time to move on. A big thing to focus on is what is it that I can get from my current role that's going to help me get ready for my next role? Like, is there something you want to learn to do? Is there a certain kind of experience you want to have? Is there something you want to be able to put on your resume? Um, and even in places that are very challenging, like taking the mindset of, okay, I'm working to get out of this challenging environment, right? There's things about this environment that are not healthy, that don't work for me. But what can I learn from this experience? And really framing it as, yeah, I'm here to learn, and I'm here specifically to figure out what value can I get that I can then bring into the next thing. And that can be huge. And I actually think it's a great uh, perspective to have all the time, right? Even if you're like in your dream job and you're like, this is great, I love the people I'm working for, I love the work I do, I love everything about this. It's like, okay, but where do you think you want to be in 3 years, 5 years? What will set you up for that, right? Are there things you can be focusing on your own growth that will set you up for that?
But I want to stay with Agile Learning Labs forever.
Me too. It's the best.
It is. It really is.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. All right. So if we were going to wrap up with some rapid fire like job search tips, right? I kind of feel like that last one I just shared is kind of like a random job search tip. Let's see what we can do. We'll like tag team.
Okay.
Back and forth until one of us is like, I don't know.
Yeah. Let's do it. You want to go first?
No.
No.
Okay.
I was like, okay, I've got some. I'm ready.
All right. So, job search tip. Pay no attention to the requires 3 to 5 years of experience. Just apply.
Mm-hmm. Don't be afraid to hire a resume writer. That can take some of the stress and load off of you. Think of it as just a starting point. They can help you craft everything that's in your head and put it down on paper, and then you can make it your own.
Use Scrum to structure your job search. Create a backlog. What's the work that you think you need and want to do? Prioritize that work. Work in short cycles, maybe even 1-day sprints. Do a retro. Do a daily scrum where you like look at what you accomplished in the last 24 hours or whatever period, and take a moment and go, hey, well done, yay me. And then consciously think, okay, what am I going to do in the next cycle? So, yeah, use that in your job search. It also gives you something to talk about in interviews.
Perfect. Mine's another kind of hiring one. Work with a career coach. They can help you set your goals, figure out if you are even pursuing something that will make you happy. They can help you focus and help you be accountable for what you're doing in your job search.
All right. My next one is actually a three-fer.
Ooh.
Network, network, network. And to make that a little richer, yes, get out and do all the meetups and all of that, right? Any opportunities you have to mix and mingle and all of that. Taking classes can be a great way to network as well while building skills. When you're networking, try to find something you can do to help the people you're networking with. Makes you more memorable.
I love that. We kind of touched on this one, but contract roles. Don't be afraid to take on contract roles. Just make sure that you understand the differences between full-time and contract roles. Contract roles will typically pay more per hour, but you're also responsible for things like paying your own health insurance, paying your own taxes. You won't get the benefit of things like paid vacation, but they can often be kind of your entry into the world of whatever you're doing. They can get good experience. They can often turn into full-time roles. So don't be afraid of contract roles. I've had several and they've worked out great for me.
You could take that to the next level. Contracting can be the gateway drug to going independent. And, not working for the man, whoever that man is, can be really liberating. It can also be really terrifying, right? Because then it really doesn't come with all the trappings that a typical job will have. Although some of the things that we think we get from a job are perhaps illusions, right? Like security. So yeah, maybe consider that. A pointer to a resource there. Several months ago, we had Joanna Rothman at our Scrum Professionals meetup talking about how to launch an independent consulting career. And that session was recorded. It's definitely up on the Agile Learning Labs YouTube channel.
She was amazing. I loved her. This is my final and favorite tip, and you've heard this before if you've been tuning in. Take care of yourself. Take care of your mental health. Take care of your physical health. Finding a job is a job in itself. Take breaks, take vacations, take rest. By you taking care of yourself, you can show up to your job search more fully with energy and with passion, and your potential employers will notice this. You will show up really as the best version of yourself. And it's hard to get away from that screen and that resume and those applications. And it's scary when you don't have an income, but you only have yourself and your life and your body and your mind. So make sure that you're taking care of it.
Ooh, that's a good one. That's a really good one. I guess this will be my last one then too. And I'm going to build off of that. Yes, searching for work is in fact work, but it's also a little different in that when you're doing typical work, you tend to see this gradual progress, right? Like, oh, we're getting closer and closer to releasing the product. And with a job search, it's mostly not like that. With a job search, it's mostly like, oh, I just have to be doing my best and doing the right things and maybe getting better at job searching as I go, but just doing it. And there isn't this like incremental, like the values being delivered incrementally. It tends to all of a sudden happen all at once, right? Like, oh, you make that connection where it's a really good fit, and you get the second interview and maybe the third interview, and you get the offer, and boom, right? And it's over. And so just being aware that, like, as human beings, it's hard not to see that like regular progress, right? So when you're in the job search, it can start to feel like, oh, right, this is hopeless. It's like, no, it's just the nature of the job search. And you just don't know when that connection is going to happen. And so just, I don't want to use the word judge, but for lack of a better word, uh, just pay attention to, like, oh, am I doing good work at this job search? Am I showing up every day and putting in my time? Am I filling out applications? Am I networking? Am I building my skills? Like, if you're doing that stuff, you're doing it right. And it's just a matter of, like, okay, when is that connection going to happen? Because it's going to happen.
Yeah, job searching is hard. I guess I lied. Maybe I do have one more tip. Our Monday office hours with Agile Learning Labs every Monday from 3 to 4. Again, even before I was ever working with or affiliated with Agile Learning Labs, I was going to these long before, and I was going during my job search when I was burned out and feeling alone, and just having a community of people to talk to. Even if I just showed up and like sat there for an hour, it was like free therapy almost. Really finding that community, making connections, talking about job searching, if anyone has any leads or tips, or doing everything I could to not talk about jobs and job searching because I was tired of it. Come on down, join us on a Monday. We are there to answer questions, offer support, meet people, just a lovely community of, I was going to say of humans, but my cats are there all the time too. I've seen other people's cats and pets. Just bask in the warmth of not being alone. We're here for you.
Yeah, it really is an amazing community. You can find us, you can find that community on Meetup. It's meetup.com/Scrum Professionals.
Love that.
Season, this has been
Chris?
amazing. It's been really wonderful getting
Yes.
to interview you. And,
So weird.
you did a great job being on the hot seat.
Thank
Maybe we
you.
should make this a regular thing. Maybe like every other one is like Season gets interviewed.
We'll talk about that at our next retro.
Excellent.
Thank you all so much for tuning in, and take care, everyone. Bye.